The very first cookie I made as a kid without adult supervision was a no-bake chocolate oatmeal cookie. As an adult, I have modified the recipe to make them just as sweet and tasty without all the fat. I'm very happy to share my lower fat version. Still lots of flavor of a traditional no-bake chocolate oatmeal cookie. I love no-bake cookies. In truth, I eat them like granola bars because the much reduced butter fat in my recipe prevents a sluggish belly, and you can add dried fruit, coconut, and nuts to make them even more satisfying for an after-workout treat. In addition to much less butter fat, this recipe incorporates a variety of sugars for flavor depth. I often make and enjoy them gluten-free and vegan. Now that's a worthy treat. For my lower fat no-bake chocolate oatmeal cookies, you'll need cocoa powder, milk of any kind, salt, butter, either regular or plant-based, or even coconut oil, which works great in this recipe as well, honey or maple syrup if you're vegan, brown sugar, granulated sugar, vanilla, peanut butter, or any nut or seed butter, and oats, either quick cooking or rolled. Prepare a cookie sheet on which you can place the cookie dough, and you really only need one cookie sheet, maybe a plate to put a couple of extras that you may have that won't fit on the sheet, and you need wax paper to place in the cookie sheet. Now I find that wax paper works best to make these cookies because cookies are going to be somewhat sticky and they remove more easily from wax paper than any other type of paper. Measure out your oats. You're going to need 300 grams, which is about 3 cups. And if you're using quick cooking oats, then just measure them in a bowl and set them aside. If, however, you are using old-fashioned rolled oats, and old-fashioned rolled oats are the thicker flakes. They're a little bit too thick. I've made this recipe without them being pulverized, and I find that they're just not a sturdy cookie. So I only keep rolled oats in my pantry. I don't keep quick cooking. So what I do when I make this recipe, I measure out my 3 cups, and then I just place them in a food processor. I'm just using a mini food processor here. And then I just pulverize them just for about 20-30 seconds till they're broken down. They look like quick cooking oats. Okay, once they're pulverized, notice the difference. This is my regular rolled oats. Okay, notice they're pretty flaky, and these are the ones I just pulverized in the food processor. You definitely have some flakes in there, but you have a lot that are broken down. The broken down version is going to give our cookies some structure and stability, and that's going to work much better than with just huge large flakes. It's not going to hold as well. Put these oats back in the bowl and set them aside until we're ready to add them to our chocolate batter. Before you begin making the cookies, it's best to have a mise en place, meaning you have all your ingredients set out, measured, and ready to go. We're going to start with, in a large saucepan over medium-high heat, we're going to add 45 grams, which is half of a cup of cocoa powder, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, 120 grams, which is a half a cup of granulated sugar. We're going to add 150 grams, which is 3/4 of a cup of packed brown sugar. We're going to add 1/4 of a cup, which is 85 grams of honey or maple syrup if you're vegan. We're going to add 28 grams, which is 2 tablespoons of butter. You could use any kind of butter, or you can use coconut oil. I have used coconut oil in this recipe and it's great. This is where the lower fat comes into this recipe, is that we're only using 2 tablespoons. Most chocolate oatmeal cookies use a half a cup. So anywhere from 6 to 8 tablespoons. And then finally we're going to add in 4 ounces of milk. Any kind of milk works here. I've used nut milk. I'm using whole milk today, but I've used all sorts of milks in this recipe. And usually I use a homemade milk that I have, like a walnut milk or an almond milk that I have in my refrigerator that I've made for the week. And then just whisk everything together. And we're going to leave these 3 remaining ingredients aside till our chocolate is cooked and ready, and then we'll add those ingredients right before we put the batter mounds on the cookie sheet. Whisk frequently. The sugars, you'll notice, will dissolve, the butter will melt, and the sauce will become shiny. We want to cook until a rolling boil. Now you notice I did add honey in here, and I like the liquid sugar in this recipe because I find that liquid sugar, since it has moisture in it, it prevents the cookies from drying and becoming crumbly, and I think that's a pretty unique ingredient for this recipe. I also find the variety of sugars in this recipe add depth to that overall flavor. As you're stirring and you start noticing bubbles, stop stirring, lift up your whisk, and we're looking for that rolling boil, which we're actually pretty there now. But wait till it comes to a rolling boil. You don't want to do this too soon. Now, when it comes to a rolling boil like this, go ahead and set your timer for 1 minute and then just stir. You could turn down the heat if you need to. The reason we want to cook for only 1 minute, because if we cook too long, the chocolate will become like candy and it'll harden and then it'll become too dry after it cools, which putting in the honey kind of helps to prevent that. But still, we don't want to overcook this. We certainly don't want to burn it. Okay, our minute is up. So go ahead and turn the stove off. Remove the saucepan from the heat, just set it aside on another burner. This next step is pretty important. These next couple of steps, do not let this chocolate sit. Immediately pour in 2 teaspoons of vanilla, give it a stir, and we're gonna add in 130 grams of peanut butter, which is a half a cup. Give that a quick whisk, break up that peanut butter. You'll notice that your chocolate's gonna start hardening, but we've gotta do this quickly. We're gonna stir in our 300 grams of oats, or 3 cups of oats. Make sure everything is stirred well and combined. If you are adding in other ingredients like some dried fruit, cut back on the oats by half a cup. Add in a half a cup of chopped dried fruit or nuts, or a combination of both. Okay, notice our mixture is getting thick, so time is of the essence when you're doing this, because it starts to harden as soon as it starts to cool. Okay, I think that's good enough. Okay, on your cookie sheet, go ahead and start dropping mounds of batter. You can make these as big or as small as you want. They do harden and firm up, so they'll hold a sturdy shape of however large cookies you want to make. And after we fill this pan, we're gonna go back and reshape these so that they're a prettier mound. And you can put these as close as you want because they do not spread at all. Okay, once you've placed all your mounds down, they're still soft, just go back and you can reshape them. If you want them to be rounder, want them to look look prettier or a little bit more professional, and they're easy to manipulate. So the cookies are all set out. Now we just need to let them refrigerate for about an hour and let them sort of firm up, and then you can eat and enjoy. So our cookies in the refrigerator for about 45 minutes. That's plenty of time for them to cool. So let's take one off and I want you to see how they are sticky. That's why we put them on wax paper. So they leave a little bit of chocolate, but they're not sticky to the hands. I think they're just a really pretty cookie. Look at that, nice all around. So actually let's tear into one. They're soft, and that's exactly how they're supposed to be. Really, really soft. They do sort of look like a chocolatey granola bar. You can see the oats throughout, and if you chose to put dried fruit and nuts in here, now that would be a nice addition to balancing out, adding a little bit of fruit flavor, some nutty flavor to them. But I love them just with chocolate and oats. I think they're super good like that. If you wanted to serve these at like a kid's party, or just have to serve these with guests, just take them off, put them on a serving platter. They might stick a little bit. I would probably keep these in the refrigerator. You don't want to leave these out on the counter, particularly in the summertime, because then they'll just start to melt and become, really, really soft. So I would likely just stick these and keep these in the refrigerator until you're ready to serve them. You can see how the oats are well blended in with the chocolate, so well dispersed, and you don't have these big chunks of oats like you would if you used the rolled oats. These cookies will keep for a week or so in the fridge. You can store them in the freezer for longer storage for a couple of months. And the way I store them is that I put them in a container and I separate each layer with a sheet of wax paper. And actually I just use the same wax paper that I had them cooling on the cookie tray. They will stick, but they'll be on the wax paper, so they'll be fine. Just keep them in the refrigerator. And if you want to transfer these cookies to eat on the go, wrap them individually in wax paper or plastic wrap, since they will slightly stick. If you're a no-bake cookie fan, I recommend giving this recipe a try. I really don't think you're gonna miss the fat, and I know your gut will be happier too. See my recipe below in the description for optional mix-ins and suggestions. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, go bake the world.